Hello, everyone. Kevin Carrillo here, and welcome to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast. My guest today is David Metzler, CEO of CBDCapitalGroup. All right, David Metzler, what's going on, man?
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited for you to be on the show. Before we started recording, we were talking about you're located in San Diego, sunny San Diego.
I'm looking at the ocean and beach right now. It's a tough life out here.
Yeah, no, and you know what's really sad is that I have yet to visit San Diego.
Now you have a second place to come stay and an office to work out of. So anytime you want, we're right above the Patagonia building in Cardiff. So like I said, it's a feet to the beach here.
I love it. I appreciate the hospitality. I'm gonna take you up on it. And I also have a close friend that's offered his place so I can stay. Me and my wife and I. So I have no excuses at this point. I got to make it out there.
Yeah, and my family's out in Texas, so we'll go out there for their Christmas, and we'll stop by and say hi.
Yeah, we'll be here for Christmas this year. So let's grab a beer or a coffee or whatever. We'll make it happen.
I'd love to. And yeah, especially because I've heard a lot about your podcast and what a good following you've created. So it's an honor to be here today.
Hey, I appreciate that. The podcast wouldn't be what it is without the expert guests that I have on. So the feeling's mutual. And for those listening, just wanted to let you know that I'm talking today with David Metzler, who is the CEO of CBDCapitalGroup, which is an investment and operating company that helps small companies grow by providing them with the capital they need. David, before we jump into CBDCapitalGroup, I first want to allow the audience to get to know you a bit. So from what I've seen and what I've researched, you have a military background. Is that right?
Yeah, that's how I was originally brought out to San Diego. I was stationed here. So I was an air traffic controller in the Navy. So I was the guy that kept all the planes in the sky and not touching each other, which is an important job, as you can imagine. And so I worked here in San Diego right by Lindbergh Field. So when you fly out to come visit, you'll fly into an airport and there's a military airport right next to it. And that's where I controlled all the planes from. So I was stationed out here and on a carrier. And then after that, I went to Columbia and went to New York and realized, as much as I love New York and the action, the quality of life here in San Diego is just untouched. So I decided after multiple years of investment banking to come back out to San Diego and live out here permanently.
Got you. Okay. Well, first, I want to say thank you for your service, and that is a very important job. Yes, I'm sure you have to be on high attention and alert all the time when you're on the clock. So that's incredible. And so, investment banking, you mentioned, is your background. Moved to New York, saw some action there, but decided you wanted to move back to San Diego. And so, it seems like that was a natural transition from investment banking to private equity in the cannabis space. What made you make that jump?
Well, so I love New York, but I also saw some of the pitfalls of that and some of the elements of wanting to make my life count for something. So I joined a venture capital firm out here in San Diego. It gave me a chance to move back here and get closer to entrepreneurs. So on the investment banking side, I worked for a firm called CIBC World Markets, and we worked with $500 million to $1 billion kind of transactions. And so, it was a great operating experience for me to kind of come in and learn finance at a high level like that. But the actual satisfaction for me is always on the heart space. I love people that have the courage to put themselves out there and really start something from nothing. There's a special individual that can actually do that. Very few people can create from nothing something. And those people are who I'm always attracted to. So I joined a VC firm. We had about 650 million under management, investing in technology, Series A companies, got close to the entrepreneurs, and then eventually everyone coming in saying they want to go change the world. I got caught the bug and basically said, you know what, I want to change the world. I want my life to matter. And so I started my first healthcare company, and that was back in 2007. And we ended up helping people that were struggling with addictions, and ended up changing the whole addiction relapse curve, working with United Healthcare, Aetna, Blue Cross, all the major insurance companies to help create a community of people. Basically Facebook, if you think about it, that's HIPAA secured, and turned out to be super successful in that we helped 40,000 people recover from drug and alcohol addictions and get to their first year of sobriety plus. And so for me, that started the operating experience and getting really passionate about making a difference, and really starting companies that help people and remove pain and suffering from the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, so you threw a lot out there. I want to back up, and I first want to say that I relate to you in the way that of how you're so passionate about helping entrepreneurs succeed. So for the past probably 5 years or so, I've been working on a company called BizTrack that basically at a high level, it's a step-by-step guide that walks entrepreneurs through the process of setting up and managing their business. So literally,
so crucial.
right?
Yeah, I mean, no one knows how to do it. There's no real good playbooks out there, and most people fail because they don't have a good exposure to what they need to do. So it sounds like you've created the blueprint basically for an entrepreneur to be successful.
Well, it's a work in progress, and the podcast has taken a lot of my time now. It's just been trying to raise capital basically, but I admire what you're doing, and the fact that you really are you're putting the entrepreneur first. Because as you know, there are so many hurdles and challenges when it comes to being an entrepreneur and wearing so many hats, right?
Yeah, exactly. You said it. And there's so many points of failure that if you can help one person just by my own exposure to mistakes that I've made, helping them avoid those same mistakes and sharing some of my scar tissues and lessons learned, that's really, valuable lessons that can be passed on that at least helps them not do that same thing. And that to me is worthwhile, because someone's dream is the most precious thing they have. And if you can help them realize it, you're doing something that is transcending the human existence, I think.
Mm-hmm. And entrepreneurs are really a different breed, right? I mean, they're people that are willing to take risks and take challenges head on, and be flexible, and and pivot different ways. And so I just love that you're helping. So let's talk about how that mindset translates to CBD Capital Group. So what is y'all's approach when it comes to your evaluation framework, and what are you looking for when you're investing in companies?
Well, it starts actually with kind of similar to what you were doing, Kevin, which is how do you create a blueprint for these entrepreneurs to be successful, right? And so what I did the first and foremost was bring together some of the best entrepreneurs and managers I've ever had the chance to work with, all the way back to my venture capital days. And so I've collected a group of, if you will, the A team, and assembled them up to come alongside these entrepreneurs, share the lessons and mistakes that they've made, share what works, and share a structure that we can coach all these entrepreneurs to keep them on track. So that's how we approach this. So my CMO built Bulletproof Coffee up to a 9-figure a year company, right? Like, so he's an expert at CPG company and how to nationally create, scale. My COO worked formerly for Microsoft and ran their mouse division. Before that, Accenture. Before that, private equity. And so guys like that just you don't get access to as a normal small company. My CFO is literally one of the world's experts at modeling and valuation methodologies. And, he built Second Life as a software engineer. And then he has a credit algorithm that allows, big players like Oaktree to underwrite capital and e-commerce companies. So all these experts coming together that you never get access to, and then bringing them to the entrepreneur.
Well, you know what I like about you saying that and you bringing that up first and foremost in your journey is you bring up the team, right? And the leadership, and who is there to support whatever focus area, whether it be marketing, accounting, finance, raising capital. But in my experience with entrepreneurship, and it's echoing what you just said, is that I think the most important component in entrepreneurship, first and foremost, is human capital. So
yeah.
It sounds like that's exactly your mindset and what you first, did in terms of corralling an A team, like you mentioned, to get this project off the ground.
Yeah, I mean, great point, Kevin. I mean, your blueprint is essential for entrepreneurs to be successful. My experience, this is now my third time after being a VC of starting a multi-million company. And so there's a formula that is replicatable in my own exposure, and it's a powerful idea. So to me, a powerful idea represents something that's just not about making a widget, changing the world. I can never raise money or create something where I can assemble a great team unless there's a give back component. So for me, a powerful idea as a starting point. The powerful idea attracts in genius, right? Geniuses only want to work with other geniuses, and they only want to work on something that makes a difference and is a powerful idea. So first is powerful idea of the formula. Second is attract geniuses. At regard, give away as much as you can to get those geniuses on the team, because geniuses attract money, right? So that's the formula. It's a powerful idea attracts genius, which attracts money. And so I've done this now 3 times. Without any one of those ingredients, it's not successful. So hence the reason I just replicate that same formula.
Does the attract the geniuses component or step, does that get messy when you've got type A personality types, right? Like there's a lot of geniuses out there, right? But if you hire all type A geniuses, they may not work as friendly together as with maybe some that are not, or less type A. So what do you think personality types when it comes to assembling a team?
Well, so good question. Geniuses aren't easy to work with naturally because they're used to being on their own arc. But geniuses love other geniuses. It's like, a moth to the flame. They want around other people that are changing and making things happen. So the art of that, in my exposure, and I'm by no means an expert, but is creating a container to let them play and feel empowered and offer it, right? So it starts with a powerful idea, usually that comes up from my head, and a desire to go do something good. But then you have to let them author the experience from there. Like the idea that we started out with is, to help these entrepreneurs succeed. The idea that we're moving towards is, how do we index the whole industry and figure out which brands work? And that is a bigger, what we call BHAG, right? Big, hairy, audacious goal, that we want to get to 100 million doses in people's bodies to remove pain and suffering. That is something that's an idea that wasn't there in the beginning, but has been fomented by the actual team. And now it's something worthy of a bunch of geniuses working together. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And what's fascinating about it is basically you're saying the same thing, but you're restructuring it in a way that is applicable to the person that is going to carry out that task. So it starts with you having the big vision, right? You want to do good, you want to help entrepreneurs, you want to help cannabis entrepreneurs. And then there you really got to specify and get to the nitty gritty of and present it in a way to the next teammate that will receive it.
Yeah, exactly. And feel like it's theirs, right? Because at the end of the day, you can't tell geniuses what to do. They have to do it on their own and want to do it. And so the magic is really just letting them run with something that they're excited enough about. And a lot of it is just listening to what they want to accomplish in their own life, right? So most of my genius formation phase is interviewing people, finding out what they care about, listening to what their goals are, figure out how to help them accomplish their goals in the midst of what we're trying to do as well, right? So what your goals are, Kevin, now knowing that you want to get this blueprint up and running, how do I help you accomplish that to get a genius like you to play with us, is probably enroll you into the fact that there's all these companies that are coming into our pipeline that want to work with us, but we can't help them all. So how about giving them a blueprint to be successful off of, right?
Right.
So
It's
that's how you take geniuses and enroll them into a bigger vision that you're working on.
it's finding that synergy, and of course that comes with like learnings and experience and exit strategies, right, where you've done it yourself. And speaking of, let's talk about the topic of funding, raising capital, right? So
Yep.
I would imagine you being a successful entrepreneur doing multiple exit strategies, it's not very difficult for you to get a raise, right? A capital raise, maybe, or maybe it is, I don't know, I could be wrong, but let's talk
No
about.
raise, no raise is easy, because it's a matter of, once again, enrolling people into a vision, and you've got to spend time finding those people, right? So there's no easy raise, and anyone that tells you that there's a formula is probably lying. That being said, raised over $20 million for my three companies, including this one. And, there's a formula that I just told you that is almost universally proven for me to work, which is find an idea, and that an idea enrolls geniuses, but it also enrolls entrepreneurs, and it also enrolls investors. Investors want to be part of something that makes a difference. They want to know that, hey, this money that I'm putting into you is a form of energy that's going to create something better. And so you've got to have that powerful idea. And then they want to know that a team can execute on that idea, hence the geniuses. And then money will follow that. So that formula is how I always build off.
It's a great formula, and I'm definitely probably going to cut that as a clip and use that for our social media because the way you laid it was great. I have a question for you. If you had a scale and there was an investor and you talked about, like you just mentioned, the power of an idea and how it could really add value to the customer and revolutionize or change the world, or you have the actual person, the founder, where is the investor putting more of their bets? Are they putting it on the idea, or are they putting it on the person?
The person. And so hence the reason I always encourage the entrepreneurs I mentioned to, in the beginning, they want to never share their idea, give up ownership, all these elements, but that's a very myopic thinking, especially when you think about it in a span of 20 years of career or 40 years of career. Like on your first couple ones, give up as much as you can to others to share with them, because it'll enroll those geniuses. Geniuses want an ownership factor that's significant. And then you're going to get money basically off of those geniuses playing with you on your idea. The geniuses bet the idea, geniuses and advisors, right? So the formula that I also add to what I just said is I also stack with great advisors. So give up a half, 5 to 10% of your company to a series of advisors that can open up doors. And I usually do it in quarter points or half point increments, because that makes someone feel significant. They'll go to lunch with you once a month, right? And then when they're involved, then money always assumes that they've vetted the idea. And hey, if so-and-so is involved, there must be something here, right? So the emperor has no clothes. No one wants to be the investor that doesn't see the opportunity. So if all these smart guys are around the table and women are around the table, then there must be something there. So stacking with advisors and management team and giving up a lot, especially on your first go or second go around, is a really important ingredient that most people don't naturally think about, because they want to hold on to the ownership. But ownership is only valuable if you can get funding and get an exit.
I am so glad you said that, and you phrased it. You described it as way as being it's myopic thinking, and I couldn't agree more. I can't tell you how many either teammates or people I've talked to, or even co-founders that have been so worried about sharing the idea with someone, or trying to get feedback, or even just approaching an investor and trying to force them to sign an NDA. No investor is going to sign an NDA for your startup. They're too busy. The fact that you can get a deck in front of them is a blessing and is good.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree? I mean,
I absolutely agree. Sign an NDA if you're going to go into a deal room, but an idea, there's 1,000 ideas, right? And actually, when I was a venture capitalist, one of the things that stood out was the idea of multiple discovery. Like the fact that a VC will sit above the silo and get thousands of business plans that we have to go through. And you'll realize that Instacart was started by 3 different people in 3 different places that were never connected to each other. And yet each of the entrepreneurs thinks they're the only one that's ever done it. But the idea is actually being called into creation because it wants to be created for whatever the reason is that it comes into reality. And so an entrepreneur thinking that they have the only idea is not the right way of going. What creates power is when multiple people hold that idea and say, I'm willing to commit resources, time, and energy to that idea, and dedicated across, a long period of time apart to get that idea across the finish line. Mm-hmm. That's what gets things done.
Yeah. And that's a perfect segue, because the next topic that I wanted to cover was CBD Capital Group's liquidity co-op. I heard you talk about this on a previous podcast, but let's talk a little bit about that and explain what that is to our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, the idea here is these small, companies by themselves are just not worth a lot, right? Even if they're well run and profitable, which most of them aren't, they're still not worth a lot. So our concept there was, how do we put them together in a theme? And our theme is that we're all stronger together. So we have that hashtag stronger together. And then how do we give them a chance into multiples that are bigger than what they can get by themselves? By themselves, they're worth 1 to 2x revenue profitable, right? But combined up, the SPACs and the public companies right now are looking at 3 to 4x revenue based off of a few different, multiple valuation methods. But, that's the concept, that these small companies by themselves will never get an exit. And if they do, it won't be that they want, but combined, they're worth a lot more. And that's what we're trying to help them do. And then investors want the same thing. Investors don't want to be tied to one company where they could get, fraudulent players. They can get all kinds of things that happen. And even if there's good actors in the companies, which we've seen both good and bad actors, the good actors still don't necessarily have the performance criteria. So at any point, any of them can fail. So helping them bond together gives something that's more valuable to investors and more valuable to the entrepreneurs. So I love win-wins, and that's what we created there with that liquidity co-op.
Yeah, it's a great concept, and it seems like, to add on to that, the natural progression for any small company would to become bigger and to become vertically integrated, right? So it seems like you're kind of putting those pieces of the puzzle together for them in kind of mastermind type class for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we're next year, in the next quarter, and into next year, we're actually creating a mastermind for all these entrepreneurs that have peers that they can talk to, that have founded companies that they can work with on a quarterly basis, because they want to not be alone, right? It's so lonely being an entrepreneur. Like, you have everything you have on the line. You're giving up your personal life for the most part, and at any point, failure can come along and just sweep your feet out, right? So having others that know what you're going through and are sharing and collaborating is part of where our vision is. But here's the important piece, and I know this is one of your questions, so I'll kind of prefix it with the idea that it's important to us. So we actually, these companies go through a medical outcome study before we buy them. It's one of the genius things that we come up with because we had exposure to the healthcare industry. So all the big players like United Healthcare, Blue Cross, all of them use what's called a medical outcome study to figure out if the programs they're paying for are working. And so it was developed by the RAND Corporation and others, and we uniquely brought it over to the cannabis space. And we can actually, with an email list, before and after, we can actually see if the products improve the quality of life. So the only way to get into our liquidity co-op, the if you will, Warren Buffett moat that goes around all of our brands, is you have to actually have a proven product that works. And the way to prove it is to use this medical outcome study that shows that your product improves the quality of life of the customers, patients that you're working with.
And how does that work? So, like, I know that there's regulations around, basically testing on humans, right? And I know there are some countries outside of the US that are able to do it, but I mean, how are you getting those findings? How do they get that?
That's a great question. So I had the chief technology officer of United Healthcare, who was a friend of mine from my healthcare days. I asked him to do this as a favor to me because we wanted to know, before we bought a company, there's 3,800 brands out there, 3,800 CBD brands right now. Which one do we pick? Which one works? Which ones should we invest in? And the answer is really simple, which is invest in the products that are actually improving quality of life of the customers or patients, right? So then the next question is how do we do that? And we actually have an email-based survey that's an actuarial-based, math-based way of determining if a brand or a product improves the quality of life of the patient. So it's 6 minutes. It takes a before and after, so baseline, and then you do a 4-week later follow-up. And based on that, you can actually see if patients using the CBD product that we're emailing out to are actually improving their quality of life. So the genius aha moment was with this work over here, and we've now done 2 of these studies with our 2 acquisitions, and it's actually confirmed that. So the FDA wants our data. We're sharing that with them. Dr. Abernethy and her team is really excited about the demographic and the usage data that we are collecting through this. And then we also have, at the same time, a hurdle or a moat that these companies have to pass in order to get into our liquidity co-op.
So that's all great. And what's even really great is the data that you're capturing, right?
Exactly.
Is there any plan to utilize that data maybe to inform another product or service that y'all are planning to roll out, or um, have you thought through that yet, or not yet?
Yeah, so with Mana, for instance, our latest acquisition, it's this great Hawaiian product. We knew it was amazing. We administered this email-based actuarial kind of medical outcome study. It showed that that the products improved the quality of life by about 6%. And that's consistent with the first company that we did. And so with that, we also had a big aha learning, which was patients had to take CBD for over 90 days for it to actually statistically improve the quality of life of the patients for pain, anxiety, and insomnia. So with that, we realized that we can actually go out and categorize those three uses, because those are the three primary uses. And so where we're moving next year towards is, how do we take that SF36 and go out and index the whole industry for signal to noise? Because like you said, there's data out there that both the customers want and the brands want. The brands are paying $50,000 to $100,000 right now to get any kind of differentiation from all the rest of the brands. So where we're moving is, we're going to start indexing the best anxiety products, the best insomnia products, and the best pain products, and having brands do this. And then with that data, we'll be able to give that to customers. We'll be able to give it to the brands who want to pay for that data, and then we'll also be able to give it to investors. So signal to noise for the whole industry, and we have a whole launch plan, go to market plan on how we're going to bring that to market next year.
When you mentioned the categorizing of those various ailments and which kind of products fit those buckets, I had a guest on. His name is Michael Klein, and has three companies, but one of which is Ask CMD, where he's trying to use data to match the appropriate product with whatever it is that you're wanting, whether it be a brand story or the high quality luxury brand or whatever it was. But, with this being at its infancy, obviously things will get better and evolve, but it sounds like personalized, medicine within cannabis and CBD is where things are headed.
Oh, that's absolutely where we're going. And so we're looking at acquisitions right now against exactly what you said. And that's that kind of sampling kind of technology that we're talking about is allowing us to help personalize what's the best anxiety. So imagine you can have a couple different anxiety products that are out there that we're looking at investing in. And if we can give consumers an ability to actually figure out which ones work best for them, then you personalize it, right? We're looking at technology right now out of Seattle that allows for customized formulations for people, right? So based on your ailments and your weight and your gender and all these other factors and your disease types. So we see that going. And then now all of a sudden you start thinking about other industries that have gone through radical transformation and are massive billion-dollar players. That's what CBD Capital is going to go create, which is like, look at Ritual, you look at a few of these other technologies that are customizing to formulations for vitamins, supplements, anything, and it's a personalized element like you said, and that's where we see this going. So that's very much where we're going, but it has to be data based, and that data in our opinion has to be outcomes, and we have an ability to uniquely generate outcomes on each of these brands and give them an ability to make some elements of sophistication towards those outcomes to their customers.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like what CBD Capital Group's doing in this respect is really kind of spearheading, the research and really trying to sift through, like you said, the noise of these products and really test their true efficacy by being so hands-on, right? And you're doing that right now without federal guidance, right? We're still waiting on the FDA's guidelines when it comes to messaging and health claims and whatnot. So, is CBD Capital Group anticipating those guidelines being implemented at some point as well, or is this the kind of the mode of operation?
Yeah, we've had multiple conversations with the FDA where they've asked us to share their data, expand this study that we're doing, because it's called patient-reported outcomes. And Dr. Abernethy, who's the deputy commissioner, was also in the health space when I was there, and she's in charge of trying to figure out how to create regulations and standards. So we shared with them our information. We continue to share with them as we collect these. And as we put this signal to noise technology in the market, we're hoping that they'll use this to actually help make regulations on doses and long-term effects and other things. Because until that happens, this industry is really fragile. At any point it can come, and no investors that are serious investors are putting money into any one company until they can actually know that the FDA has made their policies. And so, we anticipate that at Q1, Q2 of next year, post this next election. There's a couple studies that are coming online that are showing liver toxicity that the FDA cares a lot about. They asked us if we could gather that information as well, because they want to know if cumulative dosing actually has a long-term effect there, right? So we're helping give that data to them so they can make informed decisions. And then, that's our goal, is to help bring that to the industry and create some standards there.
Hey, well, that's amazing that you're working directly with the FDA and providing them that data. And, who knows, maybe that can help expedite their current decisions and we can really have some final standards in place. So
I think next year they'll create it. They've shared it a few times with, these open panels where they're allowing data collection and information and opinions to be there. So we're hoping to see that next year, because that will be a catalyst for the industry. That and an election change this year, where if the Senate goes blue, or if is really the major factor. There's a large population of people that believe that if the Senate goes blue, marijuana will be legalized in the next 4 years, and that will be a massive change in industry. Especially as you saw during COVID, marijuana, which we're not in, we're only on the CBD side because it's federally legal. But when marijuana gets passed, that will change the dynamic, and a lot of capital will flow back into the market in the U.S. for sure.
Sure. Oh yeah, I would imagine so. And it's exciting and sad about what you're saying is when the Senate turns blue, it'll, 4 years. It's like, man, like I wish we could even move faster than that. By 4 years from now, I would imagine that the majority of the states would overturn the federal legalization at that point. I mean, we got New Jersey, Arizona.
They have, right? Yeah, and they are, and they will, and even Texas is coming around, right? Like, so you guys out there are starting to give some sense to these laws, but it's a state issue and it's a taxation issue, and both post-COVID are going to only accelerate. So what you'll have is a federal legalization that will make things like banking and other things more interesting, and that'll help investors know the rules of the road. But even now in the stimulus package, at least the last couple ones, I don't know about the one that they kind of agreed on today, but they're putting the safe banking in there. That in and of itself will allow FDIC insured banks to start covering cannabis. That is a huge change to the industry, right? So we're hoping to see that in this next stimulus package, because that'll help that'll be a boon for the whole industry.
I agree, but I also think that it's a bipartisan issue, and that bill, it being baked into the stimulus package, kind of politicizes it. And I think both sides really want it, but their focus and priorities are obviously different. And so it just kind of, it may hurt it in a way, you know what I mean? Because that bill can stand on its own. I mean, we obviously want it to be passed as soon as possible, but I don't know if it's for the best to do that.
Anything that makes it easier to do this space, because right now it's still relatively difficult to, even in the CBD side where we play, it's still federally legal. It was done in December 2018 in the Farm Bill. And here we are 2 years almost later, and banking is still questionable for players, right? So, it's slow moving. And even once it's federally legal, assume that same adoption curve is going to be the case, right? But ahead of that will come a lot of investor interest. So these little things signal to the market that this is something to pay attention to.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So you touched on COVID. I want to ask you about, obviously we learned about the consumer's perspective with the impact of the pandemic. CBD sales obviously increased. E-commerce was also saw a spike. But let's talk about the impact of COVID from the investor standpoint. What did you see, and how did that affect you and CBD Capital Group?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll give you one of our portfolio companies example. They were in all the Four Seasons, all the high-end spas. and especially in Hawaii and other areas, those are all shut down still, right? And just coming online, right? So for most of this year, that went away. Luckily, e-commerce moved up because people started caring about their health, and inflammation and other stressors, have been found to be helpful with taking CBD. And so, that's something that people started spending a lot more money on, was self-help and self-health. And so, e-commerce picked up the tab, if you will, on what was lost through wholesale accounts for that company. We're seeing a big trend that continues forward on that e-commerce, and we're moving everything almost into subscription. So how do we make it more affordable for companies or for consumers to buy? And the trade-off for subscription is we get consistent revenue, you get discounts on your product, right? So that's a fair trade for everybody. And we're moving people into subscription, like I said, personalization and other trends along those lines. So Mana, our company that adds out of Hawaii, is a perfect example of having done both those two things. Having survived through COVID only makes it stronger. And then our bigger thesis is the market's going to consolidate pretty quickly because there's just too many brands chasing smaller than thought market space. Originally, when Brightfield put out their report, they said it was going to be $22 billion. That was last year at the post-farm bill passing, right? December, January timeframe. They really almost killed the industry with that report, is our humble opinion, because what it meant was all these people came rushing in for the gold rush, right? And they wanted to get a CBD product. There's too many companies chasing too small of a customer base. We're actually tracking Nielsen's data right now, and Nielsen's data indicates that it was probably this last year closer to $1 billion, and maybe in the next 5 years going to $6 billion for the industry versus $22 billion from that Brightfield. So it's still a big industry, but it's nowhere near as big as it thought. And then these products aren't moving off shelves as fast as they thought it was going to. So what matters is really knowing your customer, knowing the demographic that you're speaking to, and hitting that demographic smartly.
In that initial report with that projection of 22 billion, I remember seeing that chart and reading that. Were they accounting for solely cannabinoid extraction, like CBD products and whatnot, or were they also counting industrial hemp for like material goods?
That's a great question. I don't remember that report specifically enough to know that. I thought it was just brands, but it might be the whole ecosystem. And matter of fact, there's another one that's out there that's pretty good. But the point is still the same: is all these people came rushing into the space, right? And almost everyone got hit. I wrote an op-ed when COVID hit. The farmers last year got pulverized through this, right? Too many people chasing that $22 billion. Everyone planted. There's no demand. Crops, got moldy because they couldn't figure out, there's no marketplace yet to kind of get a really systematic free flowing of product supply and demand. And so farmers got killed. The product crop size, dropped to commoditize itself down from, it was at one point like $5,000 to $10,000 a kilo down to like $1,000 to $1,500. So it got pulverized because of that over planting. This next year will come back again where product normalizes on value, but those kind of things really hurt an early industry like we're in right now.
Yeah, no, that's a fact. I operate a brokerage firm in Dallas. And I mean, I'm telling you, you can't find a standard kind of price on CBD flower. It fluctuates state by state, and there's so much demand. There's so many farmers, as to your point earlier, that are just sitting on hundreds of pounds because they ran. It's so easy to grow. I mean, it's not easy, but it grows, right? If you do it the right way. But they didn't have contracts in place. They didn't have extraction lab partners in place. And a lot of that infrastructure is not available in certain states. So a lot of these farmers, like you said, they're just kind of sitting on product. So what's
really sad. Unfortunately, it's the new industry dynamics that always happens. But yeah, the farmers got burnt last year, and so far the commodity prices have stayed low, but brands have, interestingly enough, not gone up too much gone down too much on prices yet. but I see that changing in the next couple years, maybe next year, specifically.
And what will move that? What will normalize that current situation?
Too much glut in the industry. There's too much inventory sitting on shelves. It's not moving. Too many brands, not enough customers, oversupply. So price war is a logical conclusion to that. Is I got to get rid of it. So I'll give it at half off, 50% off, 75% off of what the markup. And then once that game starts, everyone has to go to that nuclear option. So from our perspective, just surviving through the next couple of years is going to be really important. And back to our medical outcome study, that's why it was so important. Is we brought that medical outcome study because we wanted to know, if we bought a product, is it recession proof? How do you know if a CBD product is recession proof? Well, you have luxury goods. Luxury goods always go in recessions. But what is not a luxury good is if you're solving a medical ailment for me, if you're fixing my pain, you're fixing my insomnia, and you're fixing my anxiety, I will keep paying $100 a month for that product. But if you're not, it goes away really quickly out of my budget because I need to figure out how to pay rent and other things that are important. So hence the reason we needed to know if the products were actually improving the quality of life of the patients, because it was a proxy to figure out, are these products recession proof or not?
And that goes back to your point of why you've created and implemented the SF36 Health Survey, so that you can determine the efficacy of these CBD products from these brands. There's so
well, customers keep paying for it, and the answer is if it works, right?
Right. See, we came full circle here, David.
I like that. That's when you've anchored something and you come back to it. You've hit a delivery pretty nicely.
Boom, out of the park.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so that's where we're going. That's why we try to be consistent on how we do things, showing up and helping wherever we can. And that'll be something we're going to look at. How do we give that to the whole industry, so the whole industry can move from testimonials to outcomes? It's not clinical trials yet. That's not what we were ever meant to, but think about it more as like a virtual clinical trial. And if we can do that at a cost basis that doesn't become, these companies pay $100,000 for these things, right? There's 8 companies right now that are paying $100,000 to be in a study that's similar to what we're doing. And if we can bring that down to, a nominal cost basis, let the customers, the companies have that, and help their customers understand if it's working for them and tell them, that is a truly good gift that we've helped up-level the whole industry on.
Yeah, and it's good for the consumers and the industry because you're weeding out the players from the non-players also. There needs to be some accountability with these companies, and I'm glad that you guys are putting them to the fire, and making sure that these tests are what they're saying that they say it should be. So
yeah, it's like what you do on the selling. The COAs are the industry standard, right? Certificate of Authenticity. And on our side, we see this thing as proven quality is what we're calling it. Like, your product actually works. Your customers know that it's improving their quality of life. You're proven if you pass this test, and if you're not, you're just snake oil. And that's where we're going. So that's kind of helping the industry know who to respect and who not to respect.
I'm so glad you said that, because for all the farmers listening, COAs are key. Your broker, or yourself, you can't sell a crop without COAs, and you can't even. It's hard to even have a discussion and approach a potential buyer without them. So I know they cost money. You got to budget for multiple tests throughout a crop, but it's worth it because that's what ultimately sells the crop. So
always. We won't even touch one that doesn't have COAs. As a matter of fact, authenticated COAs are the next level, right? So we kind of see that COAs, and then also the back end of, is your product improving the quality of life of your customers? As that's the full circle capturing, do these products, are they proven to work, right? Are they proven products?
Well, hey, maybe when we start growing with my brokerage business, we could talk to you about that next level of testing and certificates, because that is the future. You're right.
Yeah, I'd love to. And anything we can do to help you out. You're a good man, and helping entrepreneurs and farmers especially. I have a heart space for farmers, as my dad was a farmer. And so helping these guys survive is going to be key. It sounds like you're on the front line there.
Trying to be, man. I'm just starting in this industry, and I'm learning every day, which is part of the reason why a big reason why I started the podcast, but also to build relationships with experts like yourselves. So David, it's been a pleasure to have you on, man. I really appreciate it.
This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we sign off here, do you want to plug any websites or social media channels for people to find y'all?
Yeah, I mean, CBDCapitalGroup.com is our website. We have an onboarding form there for brands that want to work with us. Mana is a great Hawaiian product if you guys are looking at kind of best practices of standards right now, and we'll get those into the link. And there's some really cool stuff that's happening across the industry. We'll have a few announcements this next quarter, and look for us in the press kind of bucket as we put those out to market.
Awesome. And anything that we can help share on the Cannabinoid Connects social channels, just email them to me and we'll get them out there also. So happy to do it.
Awesome. We'll look forward to seeing you for the holidays. Stay safe in the middle of this COVID world that we're in. And we'll be out there. And if you're ever out this way, let me know. Love to host you and get some time with you.
Yeah, let's do it for sure, man. We'll be in touch before the holidays.
All right, Kevin. Great stuff.
All right. And thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you all. Cheers.